Words About Books is a poorly spoken podcast. I'm Nate, that's Ben. You're going to add some lasers and some AT-ATs in post, I hope, to jazz up that intro.
Maybe I can, like, acapella the whole soundtrack and dodge copyright claims. Probably not. Lucasfilm seems very litigious.
Yeah, so today we're reading Star Wars Dark Force Rising, the second in the Thrawn trilogy.
And the most clickbait title of any EU book.
Yes? Is it?
What do you think the Dark Force is when you look at that title? You're reading a Star Wars book and you're like, Dark Force Rising. What's rising, Nate? Did you guess a bunch of random old spaceships? Because you're right.
I did, actually. How did you know? Yeah, every month we pick a particular book to discuss on our book club podcast, and I picked Star Wars Dark Force Rising, partially because it's a sequel to the book we read last year, which was Heir to the Empire, and partially because of the clickbait, Ben.
And partially because you've been picking it like every month since we started this podcast, and I finally had to say yes.
Yeah, and next year we're going to read The Last Command, so look forward to that. Ben, do you want to do a brief about the author, or you want to just tell people or listen to the previous podcast?
Yeah, I'd say we did a re-record of the previous podcast. So Heir to the Empire was actually our pilot episode, and we knew nothing about podcasting, and the quality was terrible, our organization was terrible. So we did a special edition re-release of our Heir to the Empire episode where we just recorded it, but we added in a bunch of CGI monsters. I would recommend checking that out. I guess a brief thing about Timothy Zahn that's probably most relevant for these books is that Timothy Zahn actually has bachelor's and master's degrees in physics. He was doing his PhD.
I have a master's degree. No big deal.
Yeah. Never miss a beat. So he was doing his PhD when his advisor died, and he never finished the PhD as a result of that. But he started writing science fiction, and that's how he eventually came to write the Star Wars books. Probably the other brief recap to keep in mind is there's a little bit of history with these books. So at the time these were written, these were canon, officially sanctioned by George Lucas.
Officially sanctioned.
I don't know how else to describe it. He gave his blessing to these, I guess. So they were considered canon. They were the official follow-up to the original trilogy. The prequels hadn't even come out yet. I think the first book was written in 92. So this was like it wasn't the first continuation of Star Wars, but it was like the kickoff to what would become known as the expanded universe. And the expanded universe went on right up until Disney acquired the rights to Star Wars. And after Disney acquired the rights to Star Wars, they wanted to take the movies in a different direction. So they declared the entire expanded universe, which was huge and beloved, they declared that non-canon. It is still published. You can still get your hands on it. And some series that were still in the works were allowed to finish. But they were published under the new moniker of Star Wars Legends. So this is kind of a non-canon alternative universe. The other important thing to keep in mind is, like I said, this is written before the prequels, before the Phantom Menace and all that, and definitely before any of the Disney stuff. So there's some awkward things, like we don't have the term Sith yet.
Oh, wow.
Everybody who is bad is a dark Jedi because Vader was referred to, or the Emperor says to Vader in the movies, like, yes, recruit him, we'll have another dark Jedi. So we didn't even have the term Sith yet. So there's a lot of things that might be strange to somebody who grew up post original trilogy.
Also, it's pretty obvious that the idea or the thought was that the clones were the enemies that the Republic fought, not the soldiers employed by the Republic.
Yes. Yeah, the Clone War was very different. Nothing I will say nothing straight up contradicts the prequels, but yeah, you're right. The implication is that the the clones were used by the Empire, not the New Republic. And there's a lot of weird things like that. Some of the Force powers and some of the lore about Force ghosts and things like that is muddy and definitely retconned in later books.
Forgot about that. Obi-Wan goes to Jedi heaven in the previous book.
Obi-Wan goes to heaven. But yeah, so I would say if you're going into these books for the first time, I do actually like the Star Wars Legends Expanded Universe stuff. This was real early days for it. I never read these when I was a kid. As you go like closer to the origins of the Expanded Universe, it kind of gets more corny, and they didn't really know what they were doing. They didn't have any characters of their own to play with yet. All they had was these franchise tentpoles that they couldn't do anything too interesting with because you can't kill... Well, Disney would later prove us wrong on that point, but you can't kill Han, you know? Not your first time out.
I mean... I mean, you know.
That's just... If you're interested in it, listen to the previous episode or go look it up. There's a lot of stuff published about this. I think following our Dark Force Rising series, I'm going to do an episode on my personal experience with the Expanded Universe, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more then.
Yeah, we are. It's happening.
So those are the highlights that you need to know. That's the about the author. Timothy Zahn, actual scientist, very prolific sci-fi writer, and the Expanded Universe...
Doesn't have a doctorate. Yep. Got it.
The Expanded Universe, no longer canon, but...
You know what Disney should do about that? They should just they should restrict it. They should pretend like they're banning it, like with certain other books I don't want to mention. And then people will be like, "Oh, they're canceling Star Wars. Let's go out and buy all the books that are left."
I don't think Disney would make any money on that. They don't sell the books directly. They'd just instantly jack up the value of stuff sitting on bookstore shelves that was already purchased from them. What Disney should do is like...
Sell Star Wars?
No, I was going to say do the EU as cartoons or something. Because it's right there. It's source material. People love it. You could just unambiguously adapt the Star Wars Legends as like a alternate universe Star Wars.
Or you can just do live action and do it like The Mandalorian.
Well, you'd have to... It avoids recasting Han, Luke, and Leia. Because obviously at this point, I mean, we talked about this initially in our previous episodes. That was before Carrie Fisher had died. At this point, it's not even an option to use the original cast for these books.
Should have thought about that before they fucked up.
Well, Mark Hamill's an excellent voice actor. He could... I don't know if he'd be interested.
He could be the Joker. Good call.
He could be the Joker. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if they... I tell you this. If they made these into cartoons... Negative as my opinion was about the first book, if they made a Thrawn cartoon, you'd get a Disney Plus subscription out of me.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I'd
on
love
that note, Ben, I want you to, let's say, here, let me get out a stopwatch. Can you recap the important bits about the previous book in, let's say, 3 minutes?
The important bits about Heir to the Empire?
Yes, that we need to know to understand this book.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
I'm starting.
So the New Republic it's on shaky ground. It's just starting to solidify. They're trying to bring more systems into their umbrella. Heading that up is Luke, Han, and Leia, because of course. Leia is pregnant. She is going to have twins, and there is some indication that those twins are going to be very strong in the Force. Luke is concerned that he isn't skilled enough yet to be responsible for new Jedi not falling to the dark side, so he's kind of interested in learning more about the Jedi and trying to expand his skill set. The New Republic is struggling with the after effects of the war. There's a complicated political situation. Some worlds are undersupplied, some worlds haven't rejoined, and there is still a remnant Empire force.
2 minutes left.
It is very weak, but those Empire forces are headed up by Grand Admiral Thrawn, who is a tactical military genius. And through a series of clever plans and machinations, Grand Admiral Thrawn gains more and more power, he gains more and more ships, and he's becoming a true threat to the New Republic, but the New Republic doesn't even know who he is. So this next book will begin with Grand Admiral Thrawn being a real big threat and taking a bunch of systems, though, and Admiral Akbar got in trouble somewhere along the line. I don't know if that counts as important, but you like Admiral Akbar, right? You remember him? He's it's a trap guy. Yeah, so people don't like him anymore, and that's not cool.
And it ends in a giant space battle where a bunch of Republic ships were destroyed.
Yeah, I didn't even... That was the Sluis Von attack.
Is that it? Are we good?
Yeah, I think so. Basically, Thrawn is a guy... Basically, the first book just introduces Thrawn.
Pretty much. He's the main character of that book.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, this book starts off at the Sluis Von shipyard where Luke is needing his X-Wing repaired. And Lando is also there, I guess?
Well, Lando was there through a series of coincidences. That's where he got his mole miners stolen or whatever.
Yeah, his mole miners were at Sluis Von, and he came with Han and Luke from Talon Card's planet. Oh, yeah, we didn't mention Talon Card. He's a...
You told me to keep it to the important bits.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. He's not all that important. Now, while they're trying to get Luke ahead in the line, they run across a guy who's trying to steal some ships named Niles Ferrier?
Niles Ferrier.
Okay. He smokes really distinctive cigars.
Tobacco. Space tobacco.
And you think that, like, okay, this guy isn't going to be that important because they're gonna stop him from stealing these ships and tell him to go away, and then you'll just never see him again, right?
Can I make a confession at this point, Nate?
Sure.
I didn't care for the first book.
Oh my God, is this a real confession?
This is a real confession.
Is this supposed to be a secret? This is a bad secret if this is your confession.
Shut up. My confession is that I didn't want to hate this book. So I was like, I'm going to have fun with it. I'm going to do something a little different. Barring the Trump episode, I have never actually listened to an audiobook for the things we cover on this podcast. So this time I went and I got the audiobook because I was like, screw it. I'm just going to go for a nice long walk and listen to this book. And can I tell you, the audiobook is a really pleasant surprise. It's fully scored with the original John Williams soundtrack. It's got sound effects for all the fight scenes. The narrator does impressions of the original cast, and barring his Billy D. Williams impression, which is very awkward, though I did grow used to it, it's pretty good. It's really well produced, and it really elevates the material. And I'm going to be mentioning that throughout the podcast because I have such a different impression of so many characters. I can already tell because I've heard their voice, quote unquote.
Oh boy.
The voice he does for Niles Ferrier is hilarious.
Okay.
Listen up, Solo. I'm going to take those ships. And he extends every word. He's like, I'm going to steal those ships, and I'm going to take them to the Empire.
Arr.
That's how he sounds. And so when you say Niles Ferrier, I was like, that's immediately what I picture. I also know how everything's pronounced now.
Oh, that's good. How do you say Sabaoth?
Sabaoth.
Sabaoth. I'm going to forget that by the time I bring him back up.
Joris Sabaoth.
All right. You'll be the one in charge of pronouncing that one then. So, yeah, I guess Thrawn's motivation is he wants warships for his war effort, and the motivation of Han and Luke, who eventually does get his X-Wing repaired and goes back to Coruscant, and they want to clear Admiral Akbar's name. Remember that. That's important. That is a key plot point here.
I do... We're not there yet, really, but one of the things I did always like about the expanded universe was like the complicated politics of it all. It's one of those things that you can really only do in a book. I realized as I said that they tried to do it in the prequels.
You didn't like that part where they debated what to do about the Naboo crisis? Come on, that was the best part.
I'm kind of wondering if George Lucas didn't jack the style of that movie from the expanded universe books now. Like maybe he looked at what the expanded universe was doing and he's like, oh, the kids love it. We'll do more politics. The Phantom Menace the script for that kind of reads like one of these books. It's a bunch of weird side quests that don't have anything to do with each other, and then it ends in a space battle that has no stakes and no relevance to the plot. Okay, every Star Wars book in the history of Star Wars is going to end in a giant space battle. It's in the name Star Wars.
Well, The Empire Strikes Back didn't.
Did it not?
It ended in a duel and an escape from Cloud City.
Oh my god.
Yeah, they had their big set-piece battle at the beginning of the movie.
Huh. Well, George Lucas had nothing to do with that.
So yeah, they're gonna go to a place called New Cov?
Nukov.
Nukov.
Yeah, like coffee.
Coffee. Yeah, they're gonna try and expose the traitor in their midst, who set up Admiral Akbar for failure.
Well, he didn't set up Admiral Akbar for failure. He set up Admiral Akbar like he put money in Akbar's account.
Yeah.
I do like how many people are like, there is a ton of evidence against Admiral Akbar, and this is a recurring theme in these books, is like, what if it's a bluff or a double bluff or a plant? Whenever it is, but they have no reason to think that. Like, Admiral Akbar has a bunch of Imperial money in his bank account, and everybody's like, that can't possibly be real.
Well, it's because they know Admiral Akbar. And also, they hate failure.
This is, like, partisan politics dialed up to the max. Like, this is,
well,
like...
Failure? Failure. I hate that guy. And so does everyone else in the book. They're like, I hate this guy. Let's not let him be in charge. Let's try and clear Akbar's name so he can get back into things.
Yes. Failure is a space Republican.
Yeah, I think that
he's all about the troops and the flag troops.
But secretly, he doesn't care about them.
Like the space Republicans. I'm getting political on this.
Yeah, you are.
I'm leaving it in.
God.
You heard me. You know what? Don't vote space Republican.
But my taxes.
I don't give a shit about your taxes, 4 bedrooms. You're part of the problem.
Alright, so we were talking about failure, the space Republicans, Lando, Han, Luke, they're going off to clear Admiral Akbar. Meanwhile, Leia, Chewie, and C-3PO are going to meet with a Nagri guy. See, the Nagri, they tried to kidnap her 3 separate times, and they just kept failing. And finally, one of them was like, you smell like Darth Vader. Turns out he's into that. And so they're going to meet for a diplomatic meeting.
The Nagri sound like Space Nosferatu. So, the Nagri are like, I am not your enemy, Lady Vader.
I can dig that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we see Marinara Jade.
Mara Jade, I think I mentioned this in the first episode, legit good character in future books.
I hate Skywalker. I'm gonna fucking kill him. I hate him so much. He's so dreamy.
Not as good a character in these books. Kind of weirdly, like, can't gauge her age. Not sure what they're going
High school.
For.
High school.
It is very high school, but like, Mara Jade, I guess background from the previous book, Mara Jade used to be the Emperor's hand. She's kind of like a Force assassin, but the Emperor somehow like gave her Force powers and could take them away. And when he died, it just really like screwed her up. And nobody, because she was like a secret assassin, nobody in the old Empire knows who she is. So she couldn't go back to the old Empire. So she's just kind of been homeless. And she blames Luke Skywalker for taking everything away from her. But, like, she's really, like, whiny and non-committal about it. She doesn't really seem to have liked the Emperor. She's just mad that Luke ruined her gig. And that's about as committed as she is to it.
Well, she was thinking about the Emperor, or the Empire, and then later on when she meets Thrawn, she's like, I just realized that This is nothing like the empire I used to serve. I'm never going back.
Yeah, and that was kind of
It's
awkward
like,
to me because
huh?
the Empire is like really explicitly racist in these books.
Explicitly racist, and they're evil. I don't know how Thrawn is...
Like the Emperor,
Thrawn's a step up.
the Emperor was like slowly starting to move towards a plan of killing all non-humans.
Was he really?
I mean, he cut them out of military service. He cut them out of like political service.
Was this just because the movies, they didn't want to put a bunch of makeup and prosthetics on random extras?
So that's the reason everybody's human in the movies. But I think the book was like, let's do something with that. Let's play with it. Like, let's say he's a racist because, you know, they're space Nazis. They're stormtroopers. So I think the book was actually like attributing some real dark
They're
motives.
actual space Nazis.
I think, yeah,
He's actual space Hitler.
Well, because they said like the Emperor's famous hatred for non-humans. I mean, it really seemed like it was going that way, and it's weird that Mara, who we're supposed to like,
Was all about that space Nazi, space Hitler guy.
yeah, as she meets Thrawn, who is a non-human. He's a Chiss. I don't think they've ever mentioned that in the
They
books.
have not, and I don't think they'll mention it until later.
Yeah, maybe the Chiss are like,
I think it'll be a reveal like, oh my god, there's a whole planet of Thrawns here.
yeah.
And they'll study your art, and they'll get you.
But Thrawn is a non-human, and like Mara is just like, you're taking the Empire in a bad direction. And it's like, so far Thrawn really hasn't done anything that bad. I mean, he's fighting the New Republic, so he's the bad guy, but like politically speaking, as far as like the worlds he controls go, he's kind of like a Roman conquest type dude where he like,
Not a Nazi.
yeah, he lets you, like, he's still conquering you. It's not good, but he's letting you keep your culture and your religion as long as you also, like, pay tribute to him. And, yeah, that's the part Mara doesn't like. What part of it, what about the new empire does Mara not like? That's not really clear. But
That he was mean to her.
Thrawn, who is, like, very manipulative and, like, polite and calculated and gentlemanly, when he meets Mara, he's like really disrespectful and just
He's
really
kind of an asshole to her.
Yeah,
in a
he just
way
really-
that he's not an asshole to most other characters.
yeah, he just really cuts her down and treats her like shit. And obviously that's gonna spark, like, did Thrawn not get enough of a look at like Mara's sketchbook to know how she would react to those circumstances? Did he not see her like edgy Homestuck fan art
Where she draws a bunch of she draws Luke Skywalker being killed. She writes his name and circles it and crosses it out angrily.
but then there's like a heart underneath it that's like erased?
We first meet her in this book, and Card, they helped Luke escape last time. They're smugglers. They smuggling supplies with their smuggling network of smugglers. And Thrawn knows exactly where they are. He knows that they're like watching them invade his home base, and Marinara Jade knows to flee, and so they do. And most of the book, you occasionally touch base with them where they're being hunted, but they're not going to come up until much later in the book. How's that?
That's pretty accurate. I was surprised how not in this book they were.
Yeah, they're very... I broke this book up by character sections, and hers is kind of at the end, and it's mostly about her and Luke.
I guess I won't give spoilers. I won't give spoilers in case you guys do. Somebody is coming to the EU for the first time, or I guess Legends for the first time and wants to read it.
And Thrawn and Pelion, they have a conversation about all the evil things they've done in the last book, so we know that they framed Admiral Akbar and they're looking for ships.
Oh.
I assume that was just for the audience's benefit.
And Pelion sounds like Grandpa.
Is he a grandpa?
Yeah, I think he's old. So Pellion's like, Thrawn, are you sure you want to do the thing?
Oh, my old man hip.
And Thrawn's like, yes, Commander. I want to do the thing. Also, there's several things you don't know about, Commander. Important things, clever things that I did off screen.
You should study more art. Oh yeah, I guess we should rehash that. Thrawn is a super genius who studies your art, and that's how he knows how you think, and that's how he knows how to beat you.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it the first time. Thrawn is like the quintessential gentleman villain who listens to classical music and
Except
enjoys
for
it.
when he's around Mara. Then he's an ass.
For when he's Amara, then he's like,
He's just an asshole for no reason.
he just really cuts her down, makes her feel really unimportant when he has previously in the book realized like the benefits of indulging people and flattery. But I guess, you know what? I'm going to give Timothy's on this though, because the interactions with Mara, I think it's actually supposed to be that he is unbalanced around her. That she actually does get him angry. And I'm just realizing that now. I think that's my fault.
Yeah, I think you're the idiot. Yeah.
I think I am, because I'm remembering their whole interaction now, and I do think the implication there is that she made Thrawn mad. And I think, now that I'm actually accepting it, that's foreshadowing.
Okay. I don't know what is foreshadowing, but okay.
I don't know how this ends, but Thrawn can magically guess everything they're going to do, and they're going to have to stop him doing that somehow.
I, on the other hand, know exactly how it's going to end.
Oh, so...
So, I don't want to spoil, but I think you are correct in how they have to stop Thrawn. Maybe... You're not 100% correct, though, if I'm reading you properly. I haven't studied your DeviantArt page, so I don't know 100%
I keep
about
sending
you.
it to you.
I keep losing the link somehow. I can't. All right, you want to jump into where Han, Luke, and Lando go?
I'm trying to remember which side quest this is.
So they go to New Cov to figure out where this transaction came from to try and clear
This is
Admiral
before the
Akbar's
casino.
name.
This is before the casino where the exact same thing happens.
Yes, yes. So, well, they realize, they're like, I think that the Bothans have something to do with this. So we're gonna go to New Cov. We're gonna get him. We're gonna expose this conspiracy. Luke, go hang out in a random bar.
There is so much like D&D side questing going on. Like, reading this book, it feels like DMing a session where
this is the session where you go to New Cov.
I have planned for you guys to find that Phalia's sabotaging Admiral Akbar, and you take the most circuitous and irrelevant route possible to get there, and I have to on the fly come up with like a bunch of settings and characters for you guys to explore, because you've just gone in you've misread what I was trying to tell you, and you've gone in the wrong direction, and then in the whole time I'm just like, how do I get this back on track? How do I get this back on track? Tobacco guy.
Yeah. Hey, remember him? He's here.
Yeah, so they figure that Nukov, like, they're trying to figure out what Phalia's deal is. So the Bothans never really fought, which again is the flashback to like the one time they were mentioned in the movies, which is
they gained the second Death Star plans.
Many Bothans died to bring us this Many Bothan spies died to bring us this information. So the Bothans are famous spies. This is another thing that happens in the EU. One throwaway line in the movies is just like an entire backstory in the EU. The entire Bothan race is sneaky spies. And they're also like big, I picture them as like big ferrets.
Oh, okay.
They're rodent-like. They're described as rodent-like in other books.
Oh, for some reason I was thinking of like giant... No. Yeah, you know what? Ferrets are fine. Let's go
What were
with
you
that.
picturing?
Some reason I thought of like a sentient camel man.
They do have like an elongated face. Like if you look up art of Bothans, I could see where you'd get camel.
Oh man, I am looking up art. They almost look lion-like.
Yeah, they're very... I say ferrets because they were described as rodent-like, but they have those long features.
I never needed to see this image of a Bothan female in her underwear, though. That's a little weird.
Well, Admiral Thrawn, what do you get from that?
I'm sure
If Admiral
it would be
Thrawn
easy to
looked at
conquer
the-
these people.
Looked at
But
the
do
Earth
we
art.
want to?
So, yeah, the Bothans only ever fought once. They only ever did one major stand, and that was at Nukov, and we never learn what that was actually about.
They.
But that was the basis of Han's hunch for coming here, was that there's something the Bothans want to protect here, and if he could figure out what that is, maybe he could figure out why Phalia hates Admiral Akbar.
Spoiler, he hates Admiral Akbar because Admiral Akbar has power and authority and he wants it.
I don't... well, in the third book, I guess, is there more to it? Because Phalia is, he's a character in the EU.
I don't know everything about the last book. I just know the major points of what happens with the main characters.
Because I know, Phalia in future books is kind of like a unenthusiastic ally at some points. Spoilers, I guess.
I know what happens to him. I know his ultimate fate.
Does he die? Am I totally wrong?
Spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure he dies in the Zahn War. After he
okay,
loses
but not in the third book.
Coruscant.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, he becomes the Mon Mothma. He becomes the Supreme Chancellor. I don't know why you need a Supreme Chancellor. It seems like that's part of the reason that the Old Republic kind of fell. You had a lot of power concentrated in one guy. But you guys do you.
I'm going to be real with you. I don't understand any non-American political system. I don't really know what a prime minister does. I don't know why.
It's kind of like a king or a president,
But they're not. Like you're prime minister for 5 minutes and then they have another election because you couldn't get your shit together. And then somebody else has to move into 10 Downing Street. Just the sheer number of people moving in and out of that place would be frustrating to me. What was it? Theresa May? She was prime minister for 2 seconds?
Well, now they have Boris Yeltsin or whatever his name is.
Boris Hairpiece? Yeah.
I know, it's Johnson.
Tony Blair seemed like kind of roughly equivalent to president, but now it's they're just going through them like candy. I don't know. Is a Supreme Chancellor like that? Is it, or is it like a president? I don't know.
Both. What are we talking about? We're on Nukov, right?
One guy could be a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum, and the whole thing changes. But then Palpatine gets in, and he's like...
Well, Palpatine was great for the people. Remember that war that he started, basically? Because there were a bunch of separatists that wanted to leave the Republic. Presumably because his leadership sucked ass, but,
That war fought between robots and clones that no average person gave a shit about?
Well, at this point in the Star Wars EU, it was a war between people in the Republic and monster clones from outer space. Actually had more impact at this point, right? The clone's bad. Killed a bunch of people.
Well, I'm gonna be the EU advocate and retcon that for you. They're Palpatine secretly ordered the clones. The clones were always used for evil. So the stormtroopers in the Empire may well have been clones as well. Think about that.
I won't think about that. I've already forgotten that. What are we talking about? We're on Nukov, right?
We're on Nukov, and Han gets kidnapped by a sexy old lady.
Han is tailing a Bothan, and then he himself is being tailed, and he is kidnapped. Meanwhile, Luke is in a bar trying to learn how to mitigate disputes, and he finds Niles Ferrier again. I don't know why Niles happens to be there. You're right about the D&D campaign, Ah, crap. How do we get this back on track? I know. Hey, remember that character you met, like, probably several light years away? Yeah, he's here. He just happens to be in this particular bar on this particular planet at this particular time.
And he's the only person in the galaxy that smokes clove cigarettes.
Yeah, I don't think if I were in New York City that I would run into the same person twice if I hung around for a month. Like, just by going to random bars or stores or whatever. I think I'd have a hard time finding that guy.
This is Star Wars. I'm going to give that a pass. The galaxy in Star Wars has always been frighteningly small.
Yes, it's very small. So yeah, Niles helps Luke mitigate a dispute, because this is what Luke is trying to learn. He doesn't care about all the powers of a Jedi anymore. That's all fine. He needs to learn how to be a Jedi.
Well, I think Luke's thing is, like, he gets the powers. That comes naturally to him. He's kind of a good fighter. So the superpowers thing is easy, but people of the galaxy kind of look to him as, like, the peacekeeper. And that's what Obi-Wan and Yoda, when they were training him specifically to assassinate his father, neglected to teach him. And that is kind of a good point. Like, Luke continuously mentions, he's like, Obi-Wan and Yoda didn't prepare me for this.
No, they prepared you to use a laser sword to kill your dad and the Emperor.
Yeah, that's messed up, man. So Luke successfully mitigates the dispute, and Han...
And then what happens?
...is kidnapped.
Right.
Lando...
And how do we get this all back on track, Ben? The Empire comes in. There's a raid on this planet.
That's the one thing they didn't look up about this planet, was that the Empire regularly attacks it. And the Bothans have stopped defending it, I guess, because it was so important to them.
I forgot that they even defended it in the first place until you mentioned it a few minutes ago. The people who kidnapped Han said that they're not enemies of the New Republic just yet. And they're going to help him get out of here.
This is one bad thing about the audiobook, is every woman sounds the same. He doesn't know how to do different female voices.
Oh, Han!
So the lady who kidnaps Han is like, hello, Han. I know who you are. You're going to come with me.
Yeah, you're a famous war hero. Yeah, Lando's also there. I can't even remember what he was doing, but they all link up, and they're like, we gotta get on our ship. We gotta get out of here. Now, real quick, they talk about how there are 200 soldiers here. Some of them are regular army troops, but there are some stormtroopers as well. So are there are there standard military grunts that are not stormtroopers, Ben?
That would be the implication, yes.
Does that ever come up? Are there...
I think that comes from... the idea that Obi-Wan once said only Imperial stormtroopers could be so precise. I think it was implied that they were like the elite shock troops of Darth Vader, and that maybe there was a more general army
who can't shoot to hit their life or save their life.
Yeah,
they'll fire wildly. They'll manage to retreat because Han Solo is running and going after them.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Does that ever come up in other EU books, Ben?
I mean, the Empire is pretty much not in other EU books. Like, there is a little bit of an Imperial holdout. Pelion comes back, but they're actually pretty friendly to the New Republic and newer books. So,
well, yeah, you kind of can't be hostile after they kick your ass several times over the course of like a decade, and you've basically got nothing left.
Yeah, basically what they're trying to imply is that the Empire, it literally is like Rome versus the barbarians. Of the Empire is just disciplined and methodical, and the rebels are kind of this hodgepodge of different cultures that doesn't really know how to fight together. And that's why the Empire's threatening. Never really played out like that in the movies.
No, not at all.
Because they were supposed to be Nazis in space.
So, there's also another part I liked. I don't know about you, but they need to escape. And they need to get their X-Wing and everything. So, Luke does not just whip out his lightsaber and start murdering dudes left and right. And when they're trying to escape from some TIE fighters and whatnot, he's like, yeah, I don't want to reach out with the Force and scramble their brains. It feels like he's more concerned with being not a dark Jedi than he is with escaping with his life.
Yeah, I really do like Luke's hesitation to kill. That was one of my complaints about the new movies, is that sometimes Rey
kidnap children.
Yeah, sometimes Rey is upset about killing people, and other times she's just mowing them down by the hundreds.
Like that time that she destroyed that prison transport, and she was like, Chewie was in there! And then it was like, oh, he wasn't in there. I will never think about this again.
Yeah. And, the new movies, initially, when we started doing, we were going to compare the Thrawn trilogy, because the Thrawn trilogy was supposed to be the sequel to the original, and we were going to compare this to what actually wound up being the sequel to the original. And I think at the time we recorded the first episode, only the first 2 movies were out.
Yep.
And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to go with the new movies. And nope, complete course correct on that. All the problems I have with the Thrawn trilogy are microscopic compared to the disaster that was the new trilogy. And it's a shame because, it's not... The new characters were fine. I like Poe, I like Finn, I like Rey. They were totally trashed by the writing and direction. And it's not even like I've got a thing against Rian Johnson or J.J. Abrams. It was just...
I have a thing against J.J. Abrams.
It was just so poorly organized from every level. J.J. Abrams is a fine director. I don't think he should be writing.
Yeah, he should not write anything anymore. He should kind of retire his pen. But
there's got to be some continuity expert at Disney who's like, no, JJ, we're not doing that.
Well, the idea was, and we talked about this, we need to write a sequel. Okay, cool. You've got 3 movies. What are they going to be about? It's like, maybe we should come up with a story first. They didn't.
In fact, I said, though, that's not a problem unique to Disney, though, because that's exactly what George Lucas did with the prequels, because The Phantom Menace has no business being there.
What are you talking about? It introduces Anakin as an 8-year-old child, and then 10 years later, he's not.
And Padme is a 14-year-old girl, and then it's really weird.
Well, she stays the same age, and he keeps getting older.
Because that's exactly what happens. And she's a senator. So it's doubly just expected.
So a bunch of dreadnought ships come in to aid the escape of Han and Lando and Luke. Luke goes off somewhere else in his X-Wing. Han and Lando go off with the dreadnoughts. And the rest of this book all kind of happens at the same time. But I'm going to just break it down into different perspectives because it is going to be impossible to talk about otherwise. So I wanted to go with Han and Lando next. I feel like that's a good place to start. What do you think? Just a continuation of the story. They go with those women who had those dreadnought warships, and they arrive at a base that looks suspiciously like an old Rebel Alliance base, Ben. And then Han recognizes a man whose name you'll be pronouncing.
Senpai.
Yeah, his man crush. Senator Garm Bill Iblis? Am I close?
You're very close, actually. It's Garm Bill Iblis.
Okay.
And
this
Han
is his man crush.
Swooning over this guy.
He's like,
he's a Corellian, which
I don't want to cheat
Han
on
is
Leia,
Corellian.
but we talked about if we each got one freebie, it would be you.
So I don't know if I could do this accent, but in the book, Garm Bill Iblis, I forget his first name. I honestly forget this guy because
Garm. He's a very important character, Ben. He's here and then he shows up later.
I forgot about him. So all I remembered is Han is just infatuated with this dude for some reason. So
Did it play like love music?
they're both Corellians, which they're from the planet Corellia, and Garm Bel Iblis is like a very famous senator who was like
He's a senator.
super cool, and he met Han once when Han was 10.
Oh yeah.
And Han asked him some hard-hitting political questions, which is like totally in character for Han. And he always remembered Han from then on, and he made a point to keep tabs on Han. And in the audiobook, he talks like a I'm gonna say Western grandpa. He's like, yeah, I always kept tabs on you, Han. And Han's like, well, I guess you must have been disappointed every now and then because I'm a fuck up. And he's like, I'll admit, I was a little disappointed in you. It was a shame when you dropped out of the Imperial Academy. But considering that we wound up being a bunch of weird space racists, maybe it's better you didn't become an Imperial officer.
Well, considering that we became a bunch of weird space racists, it's probably better.
So, yeah, we find out that Garm Bel Iblis has a little mini fleet that the New Republic could sorely use, but because Mon Mothma and him had a like high school argument,
Yes.
way back when, he doesn't want to come back unless Mon Mothma expressly asks him to come back.
Well, he's a space
like,
vampire. He has to be invited in.
his pride is like, if Mon Mothma doesn't want me there, I don't want to be there. And it's like, the Empire is going to kill both of you if you don't figure this out, right? And he's like, even
He
so.
thought that Mon Mothma was going to proclaim herself the Empress after they overthrew the Emperor, and then she never
And
did.
he told all his friends she was going to do that, and then she didn't, and he looked like such a dick, and now he can't show his face at the party. It's so weird. And Han is just like, oh my god, I'm going to talk to Mon Mothma for you. We got to figure this out, man.
We gotta reconcile. We need you, Senator. I need you.
Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, I don't care if Han has like a daddy thing, but it's like, did you ever see that episode of Archer where the one guy kidnaps Archer because he's attracted to Archer?
Yes.
And Archer's like, oh my god, you're gay? And he's like, I'm not gay. He's like, you want to have sex with me? He's like, but just you.
Yeah, I'm only
It's
gay
like a
for you.
singular same-sex attraction. That's what Han has with Garm.
Yes, very much so. Also, Ben, those dreadnoughts and this fleet that this guy has, it's from the Dark Force.
Oh my gosh, Nate. That sounds like the kind of shocking cliffhanger on which I will have to divide this recording session because we went on for entirely too long. That's right, everybody. If you want to follow along with us on our journey to discover where Garm Bel Iblis found several ships from the enigmatic Dark Force that we all totally remember, you'll have to tune in next week for the exciting conclusion to Timothy Zahn's Dark Force Rising. In the meantime, if you've already finished the book and are looking for something new to read, next month we will be covering Promise of Blood, Book 1 of the Powder Mage series by Brian McClellan. If you just don't have enough words about books in your life, consider following us on Twitter at WABpod or checking out our blog over at blog.wordsaboutbooks.ninja. If you really like what we do and you'd like to help us grow, please consider buying us a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com/wabpod, link in the show notes, or give us a share on social media. Both of these things will help us dedicate even more time to the podcast and maybe even some fun new projects. So, with all that said, thank you very much for listening, and good night. See you next week. Next time on Words About Books.
And then after that, he's like, you were the Emperor's hand? Well, he had a lot of hands. You're not special. You're garbage. Now tell me where Talon Card is, or I'll throw you off the ship.
So, like, it's the thing, though, of, like, it's the Chekhov's gun. You put the gun on the table, and we're all waiting for it to get used, and then somebody just kicks in the door and starts shooting everybody.
But he immediately forgot about her when he ran into the senator. Oh, yes.
We ran into Carm Bell Daddy.
Carm Bell Daddy.